Okay, very warm welcome, a very hearty welcome. We are going to be discussing a very interesting topic, a heavy topic, because it's all about people, it's all about behaviors, it's all about people's attitudes, it's all about thought processes, what happens. And the good thing for you is it's a signs of interpersonal intelligence to improve collaboration, to improve relationships, there are just a few things, tip of the iceberg that what I'm talking about. There is so much more in the field of behavior analytics, people's behavior and attitude analytics. We are going into a whole lot of dimensions, right? How we can, this can be used as a tool in a whole lot of dimensions, from recruitment to performance management to competency mapping to collaboration, building teams, getting along between husband and wife, between colleagues. It touches every aspect of the human life, right from birth till as long as we're there in this world. So thank you once again for being in there on this webinar um, to understand people's behavior, attitude, and thinking. Yeah. So yes, so we do offer. We have interacted with probably lakhs of people on this subject. We have also been in this field for over 25 years now. Yes, there are hundreds of tons and tons of experience that comes, behind this particular webinar that we are going to be sharing with you very, very soon. Yeah. So I must definitely introduce my team. My research team definitely helps me immensely in terms of the research, in terms of their ability to support content creation, right? Oscar Murphy, as many of you are aware, Life Strategists is in association with TAW, the assessment world, or a network of professionals in behavioral and management sciences from across the globe. Many of our consultants are authors, researchers, facilitators, trainers, coaches, counselors, and consultants across the globe in almost every city. We are we have published hundreds of thousands of research papers in different journals. We keep contributing articles to even in-house magazines in many organizations, and we're also happy to present, as you see it on the screen, three wonderful dedication to the human society: the HAPPY, the Search, and the Unmasking Candidates. HAPPY is actually an acronym: Holistic Approach to Personality, Psychometrics, and You. Search, again, is very useful book for building your career. Select, Enable, Attain, and Reach Career Happiness. And of course, Unmasking Candidates is a latest edition, a wonderful tool for HR professionals and all those who are in the business of recruitment. Yes, let's look at that. Let's go deep in. Behavioral analysis. The moment you say behavioral analysis, three things come into mind. One
Hello.
is B for behavior, A for attitude, T for thinking. Correct? So now if you look at the diagram, you'll notice that it's in a circle, right? It is in a circle, and each one is actually touching each other. Each one is influencing the other. So, but now let's look at, because we talk about behavior, why do we do behavioral analysis? So that we can bring about a positive change within ourselves or within the people around. But what are the challenges in doing so? When you say behavior, B-A-T, bat, behavior, the challenge with behavior is it's caught in the environment one lives. It's caught. Nobody teaches you behavior. It is caught actually. You catch it by observing your, the adult world. You by observing your parents, your teachers, your elder brother, elder sister, right? Your neighbors. You watch a TV program, you get influenced by that. So it continues. The journey actually continues. So now that is one dimension. So it is caught in the environment one lives. And if that is caught in the environment one lives, that means the conditioning is already happened, programming is already happened. If a person is 25-year-old, 30-year-old, is it easy to help ask somebody to change behavior, or is it easy for him or her to do it? Very difficult, because of the environment it's caught, it's conditioned. Now look at what drives the behavior. Attitude is driving the behavior. Attitude, is it easy to change? Even more difficult because it's conditioned over the years by surroundings. And not only that, it is also inherited. So if it is inherited, motherboard, template, how are you going to change the motherboard? It's not easy. So behavior, difficult to change, attitude, even more difficult to change. So then what do we do? Right? The moment that comes in, you realize the only savior for growth and progress happens to be your thinking, your thought process. And that is why when you say behavioral analysis, we analyze all the three key aspects. We want to understand the person's behavior, right? We want to understand the person's attitude, and based on collectively what is the person thinking or what is he likely to think, how is he going to go into, and that's precisely where the entire dimension or the dynamics actually start. Yeah. So let's go further. So now let's understand how do the behaviors actually, how does a personality shape up? What happens? Number one, as you can see it on the screen, if there are environmental factors, there are heredity factors. Heredity is genetics, that we are born with that. We will go into the details, right? On the other hand, there's environmental factors, and one more dynamics that happens in the mind is you're acquiring KASH, K for knowledge, your attitudes, your skills, as well as your habits. All these are accumulated factors that are also taking place and taking shape. Right? Now, when you look at that, what is important in behavior analytics is it is not, we cannot see the influences from heredity or environment or the knowledge what we hold, my qualification, my degree, separately. It is the interplay of heredity and environmental influences that are key in shaping one's personality, thereby one's behavior, thereby one's attitude, and thereby one's thinking as well. Yeah. So now, when you look at that, there's a wonderful quotation from Eric Erikson, another great psychologist. We'll talk about his contributions very soon, but Eric Erikson says, the more you know yourself, I repeat, the more you know yourself, the more patience you have for what you see in others. The more I discover, more I self-introspect, more I understand myself, I will have more patience and tolerance with other people. Wonderful, wonderful quotation from Eric Erikson, right? A person of that kind of a huge contribution. We'll talk about that. Influences on growing personality. When you talk about behaviors, everything started. In fact, this gentleman, Sigmund Freud, you might have heard about it. Wonderful personality. Today, considered father of psychoanalysis, father of psychology. Many people recognize him. Immense contribution. So when his landmark research, he started saying something very, very interesting. Sigmund Freud says that if you really look at it, like we discussed earlier, a human behavior is influenced by two factors. You see top and the bottom, heredity as well as the environment. But one of the important contributions of Sigmund Freud was the pleasure and the unpleasure principle. So that means he says, if people's behavior, when you look at some people are motivated to do something, so then how do you want to get the job done? How do you want to make sure you motivate people? So you can use the pleasure or the unpleasure principle. What is a pleasure principle? Pleasure principle is giving the carrot. Unpleasure principle is using the stick. Right? That was the first contribution of Sigmund Freud, way back. Right? So he says people are motivated to seek pleasure because anything that makes them happy, anything that gives them satisfaction, they are willing to go after that. And anything that they want to avoid pain, all right? So that is where even that avoiding pain also is a motivator. Because my teacher told me, Srinidhi, you have to do homework tomorrow, right? Otherwise, you're going to get punished in the classroom in front of everybody. So what did I do? I made sure that I do the homework. I did the homework not because I like to do. I did the homework because I wanted to avoid the pain. So unpleasure. So the pain and the pleasure, both of them become my motivators. So that's the way the behavior comes in. But it was important to notice something very interesting. Um, because Freud spoke about life energy and death energy. You've seen people, when you talk about behaviors, you've seen people with a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of gusto, a lot of energy. They are moving here, they're doing things. They are the self-starters, they are the initiators, right? They are the risk takers, whole lot of life energy. Oh, anywhere they go in, the moment they come in, they bring in energy. At the same time, you also see people lifeless. You also see people kind of struggling, right? To motivate them, even to understand, even to make them speak. Even when you say good morning or good evening, whatever the wish may be, they find it so difficult even to answer you back or to wish you back. They don't even want to lift their head. So that means people are being tossed between life energy and death energy. So behavior analytics, why is it important? We want to understand how how it is so important for us to bring in life energy into our own lives and into our organizations, into our homes, so that thereby we live a life worth every bit as long as we are there in this wonderful place. That's where you talk about personal beliefs, right? Your behaviors, your attitudes lead to personal beliefs, your thought processes. Those personal beliefs lead to personal behaviors, so individual behaviors. Those individual behaviors lead to personal benefits. So I am behaving like this, I'm doing this because I have a gain, right? That's a pleasure. So because I'm going to get a gain, and that personal benefit motivates me further to consolidate my personal beliefs. So it is a cycle that goes on, right? Personal beliefs lead to personal behaviors, and personal behaviors lead to personal benefits, and that influences further, consolidates personal beliefs yet again. So now, Sigmund Freud laid a foundation to understand behaviors. He said the behavior dimension actually starts right from the time you're born. So that is why he said Freud's theory of personality development is fundamental to understand behavior analytics. And look at the two words there, ladder of growth and fixation. Look at both are opposites. Growth is something that you're growing, you're doing better than, in terms of your health, wealth, knowledge, anything, you're growing. Fixation is something is fixed, you're stuck there. Correct. And so what happens? So it's important for us to understand what at each stage, right? You have the oral stage, the anal stage, the phallic stage, the latency phase, as well as the genital stage, what happens. So let's understand from this figure now. So now let's look at 0 to 2 years. Freud says a child is going through something called the oral stage. You've seen the child, the behavior that you notice is anything and everything that the child puts it in the mouth. Because the only sense organ that is very, very active at that point of time are the taste buds, right? The mouth. So the child want to experience everything through the mouth. And that is why it's an oral stage. Yeah. Now, this will tell you why is it important for us 0 to 2 years that we take care of proper dining etiquette, proper eating etiquette. If that is taught, then the ladder of growth happens. If the dining etiquette or the eating etiquette is not proper, then the fixation happens. And the fixation also can be leading to a lot of self-confidence, self-esteem issues. Now, 2 to 3 years is the anal phase, Freud says. Anal is the child is very curious that something is coming out from its own body. So it wants to
Right.
understand, right? Because it's very curious. And that is where the entire dynamics of the anal stage. So which means the most important dimension is the toilet training, ability to control the bladder, ability to control one's urge for fishes. It's very, very important. If that happens healthily, the child grows up well. Otherwise, a lot of low self-esteem, low self-confidence, all that happens by the age of 2 to 3 years, mind you, my dear friends, the anal stage, heavy influence on the behavior. 4 to 5 years is the phallic stage. Phallic stage is the child becomes aware of the sexual difference, the gender differences between the male and the female. So that's why you've seen the young boys and girls in that age group of 4 to 5 keep touching their private parts, and then they're very curious. 6 to 12 years, the child is very interested in studies. They're not aware of any other dimension. They're completely focused on their growth, very industrious, right? And then, of course, then comes the genital stage, puberty plus, right? Puberty plus is around 12, 13, 14 years, generally the teenage, right? And then if the healthy growth is there, wonderful. But then based on what Sigmund Freud suggested, actually there's a whole lot of dimension we can go into, but then I would definitely bring in Eric Erikson a little later to understand what happens, because Eric Erikson went even greater detail than Freud himself. So we'll talk about it a little later. But Freud, sticking to Freud, he spoke about something, physiological to psychological growth. He says that you and me go through something called the three phases in our mind, in our thinking, because that's where the behavior starts. The id, ego, and the superego, right? The id is the self-gratification, right? It's a selfishness. I want, there are 20 sweets in a on the buffet, then I want to grab at least 3 4 because I like it very much. I don't care whether for all the other 20 people who are there whether they will get one each. No, I will only look at my own. It is my needs first, right? Hedonistic or self-gratification. Then you have the realistic, the ego, and then you have the moralistic. Sometimes we have a lot of thoughts coming in, but then we are morally controlled by our own minds, right? And that's where you talk about a little more clarity here on what I was just now speaking. Id, ego, and superego. Look at it, one-line definitions. Id is I want to do that now. I don't care who's going to get upset or whatever it is. I want it now. I want to do that now, right? Whatever the situation may be. The ego says maybe we can compromise. It's okay, fine, let's compromise. You tell me what you want, let me tell you what you want, let's find a midway path. That's where the ego is defined. It's not the ego the way we understand from the layman terminology, as used by Sigmund Freud. And the superego, it's not right to do that, right? So it's something morally, it controls your behavior. So that means your behavior analytics is very important as to what is the superego that exists, what is the conditioning and programming has happened in the person's mind, what to expect from him or her, and what not to expect from him or her, right? Becomes very critical, right? He also spoke about the Electra complex and the Oedipus complex, right? Electra complex and the Oedipus complex. And Electra complex is the daughter, virtually falling in love with the father, the male figure, right? And Oedipus complex is the opposite, the male child, falling literally in love with one's own mother, right? From a sexual perspective. And of course, that is why Freud also became controversial, but then a lot of what he said, right, has a lot of meaning and depth if you really look at the beautiful arguments that he put forth in substantiating his views. But something more he spoke about is, unconscious, the preconscious and the unconscious again. So to explain or understand this unconscious bit, Freud's view of the human mind, the mental iceberg he spoke about. So when you look at the mental iceberg, Freud talks about, number one, that what you and me are aware, the conscious level is the thoughts and the perceptions, whatever I'm thinking and whatever views I have, whatever views you have, so that we are all aware. What the subconscious level is our memories, what we are able to remember, and the stored knowledge, whatever we have acquired, whatever we have learned. Yeah.
لا في مكتوب done speaking عادي.
Okay, and the unconscious level is, we have a lot of fears. We have a lot of violent motives. I feel like punching somebody, but it is unconscious level. I may not do it, but it's there deep inside one's mind. Unacceptable sexual desires, irrational wishes, immoral urges, shameful experiences, and selfish needs. All these are completely at an unconscious level, right? So now, but you must understand, behavior analytics is one thing that can throw a lot of light into many, many of these areas. Yeah. So that is why it is important for us to understand the dynamics. So now I have been talking to you about the oral, anal, right, the phallic, the latent, and the genital stages. So Erik Erikson took this a little further. In Erik Erikson's model, he said, right, when you are it moves from an infant to a toddler to a preschooler to a grade schooler to a teenager, young adult, middle-aged adult, and an older adult. As an infant, you go through trust and mistrust. To give you a very, very simple example, as an infant, you're only probably 0 to 1.5 years, right? Trust versus mistrust. You're crying immediately, their attention is given to you by your parents or the caregivers. They give you milk, they give you attention, they hug you, or they change the nappy. You're attended to immediately. And that experience happens time and again. What happens? Your trust grows. But if it doesn't happen, if nobody attends to you, nobody cares for you, and you're crying and crying and crying, and if that sad situation, the negative attention comes to you, what happens? You grow up mistrusting the people around you, the world. So this trust and mistrust actually started when you are 0 to 1.5 years. And then the journey continues. Autonomy versus shame and doubt as a toddler, right? Initiative versus guilt as a preschooler. Right? Grade schooler is industry versus inferiority complex. And then, of course, you have as a teenager, right? You have and identity versus role confusion. As an young adult, you have intimacy versus isolation, right? People are married, people are not married, or they have boyfriends and girlfriends, they don't have one. Okay, there is an issue, right? And middle ages, generativity versus stagnation. The kind of millions of adults middle age are stuck in their career, midlife career crisis. They're not moving ahead. Fixation, they're stuck. And the old adult, integrity versus despair. Not everybody is like Abdul Kalam, who had a wonderful life journey throughout, right? And then when he reflects back at his old age, there is integrity. There are a lot of old people, right? They're about to die, but then they're so unhappy with the life that they have led, they would probably not want to even reflect on that. Yeah. So now, teenager, again, a major issue, identity versus role confusion. That's why a lot of parents actually find it extremely difficult dealing with their children because they moved to the next stage. But look at this chart that I'm going to show you. Look at the crisis, trust versus mistrust. Basic virtue is hope. Age is 0 to 1.5. Autonomy versus shame, right? Very, I am very independent doing things, but then when it doesn't happen, I have shame and doubt. The basic virtue is the will, 1.5 to 3 years. Initiative versus guilt. What's the purpose? There is no purpose at all, right? So then if then the person will grow up with guilt. 3 to 5 years, though you can imagine by the age of 3 to 5 years old, person self-esteem, person self-confidence, all those behaviors are already shaped. That's why Freud says by age 4, you are 80% of an adult. By age 6, he says you are 90% of an adult. So that is why today the entire focus, when we talk about behaviors, is on the early childhood parenting, early childhood influences on the child. And of course, it continues. The identity versus role confusion, leads to fidelity, right? Competency is about industry versus inferiority, 5 to 12 years. Intimacy versus isolation is all about love, 18 to 40 years. Generativity versus stagnation. The basic purpose, virtue is care, 40 to 65 years. And ego integrity versus wisdom, 65 plus, right? And that's where the entire dimension is. But you must know, while we deal with human behavior, one size fits all approach to people does not help. That is why today, when you talk about behavior, people's behavior and attitude analytics, it becomes very important. Thereby, we can fine tune our communication, our responses, our own behaviors to suit the different individuals with whom we interact. Let me bring in Carl Gustav Jung. 1875, June 1961, at one point of time. He was very actively involved with Sigmund Freud himself, yeah. and then he's a Swiss psychiatrist and a prolific writer. In fact, Carl Gustav Jung, actually one of the front runners in putting a framework for behavioral analytics. And that happened with the public, he's known for analytical psychology. And by publishing a book called The Psychological Types in the German language in the year 1921. Just a few more days to go, and we are in 2021. That means really the foundation of behavior analytics in a scientific form really started with Carl Gustav Jung, because he wrote this book, The Psychological Types. It was written in German. You have the book cover in front of you. That's Psychologische Typen, right? C.G. Jung. The J is silent, so we pronounce it as Jung, not Jung, right? So what he had to say, right? He said, what influences people's personality? This is very important for us to understand, right? The heredity and environment, two important factors, right? Now, when these two combine, your personality is shaped. So now, when you talk about heredity, because this is something very interesting that you see on the screen. What influences people's personality types, personality styles, personality traits? All three are different. Even though people who may not be aware, they may use it they intermingle, they think they're all the same, they are not the same, right? Types are basically influenced by heredity. Styles are influenced by environment, whereas traits are influenced by situational dynamics, right? That means the trait can change from within hours. Styles are a little more permanent, and types are almost kind of sealed. Throughout your life, you will be like that only, yeah? So now let's understand the heredity dynamics. So when you look at heredity dynamics, you have the father, mother, father, mother. One chromosomal chain comes from the father, one through the mother, and when both of them mutate, you have the DNA, the deoxyribonucleic acid. And that's where the heredity actually takes place. So now, and that means at the time of conception in your mother's womb, how you're going to think, what are your likely behaviors are already sealed, right? And that becomes very, very important that you already know that. Then, of course, the environmental aspect. One is the heredity. Then you have one point that I want to make is we are all carriers of chromosomal chains. So that means when your parent gave birth to you, it is not that the the genes, the genetics came from your father or from the mother. The genes came through the father and through the mother, because the genetic disposition can be because of your great grandparents, easily about 300 to 400 years ago. So that means almost about 6 generations is what the scientists have tested. 6 generational back, one of your great grandparents' genes you could be carrying. That means your parent was just a carrier of the chromosomal chain, right? So we are all product of chemistry in more than one way. So then there is the environment, right? Environment, the childhood, the schooling, our early friends, the books we read, the television or the computers we watch, right? The entire dimension, all of them shape. So when you talk about people's personality types, now let's focus on types. We'll come to the styles and the traits a little later. But when you talk about personality types, what is a personality type? How you view others, how you gather information, how you communicate, how you put things across, and how you organize your life, right? And that's how. Now, interestingly, what Carl Gustav Jung spoke about are 4 dimensions. You see it on the screen, right? The two opposites. Thinking, opposite of that is feeling. Then you have the sensation, opposite of that is intuition. Of course, in between you have 4 more parameters, which is sensory thinking, intuitive feeling, as well as sensory feeling, right? So now that is how the entire dimension, your thinking is influenced by these 4 factors, which we'll cover as we step up further. Jung's type theory of personality, behaviors, and attitudes, 4 different attitudes and functions you're born with. See, all these days, word attitude doesn't mean, of course, it has a dictionary meaning, but then it really doesn't mean anything in your mind, because when you say attitude, it doesn't create a visual in the theater of your mind. It's a non-visual word. So that is why people, it's more looks like a concept than anything else. So people don't understand what is an attitude for the simple reason behaviors are observable. Attitude is you can observe only through a behavior, which is why they say if I give an adjective, positive attitude or a negative attitude, then some clarity is there in understanding what is an attitude, even though it may not be completely. But now, if I tell you, that's where I big thanks to Carl Gustav Jung. He said we are born with four attitudes. All the four are inside our mind. F is the feeler attitude, right? The intuitor attitude, the sensor attitude, and the thinker attitude. And accordingly, we are all embedded to do certain functions better. So that means your genetics actually give you job satisfaction when you choose a career or a job based on your genetic coding, right? So they are genetically determined. Each person has a preference, right? All of us have all the four. Nobody gets a zero on any one of them, but the percentages can vary. So some can be dominant, some can be weaker, right? Some can be somewhere in the middle, right? The median score. Then, of course, you have the preferences become stronger as we grow because you tend to be using that particular type of personality time and again, unknowingly, probably even unintentionally. And you can use or develop other attitudes due to situational demands, right? So which they're already embedded, but a situation demands, right? Because you're interacting with different people from your childhood to your schooling to your college and things like that, and that is where situation demand can actually bring it up further. Now, let's very quickly understand. So, because this lays the foundation to understand behavior analytics. So, what is the feeler's behavior? All these behaviors have the ineffective side as well as the effective side. Ineffective side of a feeler is impulsive, manipulative, over personalizing, sentimental, postponing, guilt-ridden, and stirs up conflict even in the middle of the night. But whereas the effective side of a feeler, of course, they're very subjective. They take everything very, very personally. They're very emotional people. Feeler is a word you use more to represent emotional thought processes. Emotion. They think emotions strongly. They are the ineffective side, which can take a feeler dominant person actually down the drain. Yeah. Whereas the effective behaviors, which actually makes them do well in their life and career, is they're very spontaneous people, very warm, very persuasive, very empathetic, very friendly, grasp traditional values, very probing, very introspective, and draws out the feelings of others, right? And of course, right, very, very loyal. And that's a huge, huge attribute that they bring in. You can trust them. They're very, very loyal. Normally, they don't walk out of organizations, they don't walk out of relationships, unless, of course, they're emotionally hurt. Yeah, emotional wounds can do damage. Now let's look at the intuitor's behavior characteristics. Intuitor is a creative person. So what does he do? What is the ineffective side? He can use his creativity, unrealistic ideas, far-out ideas, fantasy bound, scattered, right, devious, out of touch, and of course dogmatic and impractical ideas that don't work at all, right? So that is why a lot of people have ideas, a lot of intuitors have ideas, but they're not going to do anything with that idea, or they keep wasting their life with wrong ideas. The effective side of the behavior of an intuitor is original ideas, imaginative, right? They're very creative, very broad gauge. And broad gauge means their width is very high. They know a little of almost everything. So they're kind of a generalist wonderfully, right? They're cut out for those kind of jobs. Charismatic, idealistic, and of course, they're intellectually tenacious. They don't give up, because they're right brain activated. They are very, very idea driven. So they can argue with you. It's not easy to convince them either. Ideological. Therefore, if they take to some ideology, they will fight their battle and they'll stand up for that ideology, whatever they subscribe to. Right now,
Correct, sir.
the
So,
thinker, right?
हाँ,
The
no
thinker
problem, sir.
personality,
मैं बोल दिया.
right? The
ठीक है, sir.
ineffective side is the verbose, they are indecisive, cannot make up their minds, over cautious, too careful in the world, over analyzing, we say analyze, analyze, and paralyze. They would rather paralyze but not take decisions faster, unemotional because they're so much into numbers, they may not really understand other person's emotions, right? When they're going through non-dynamic, controlled and controlling, over serious and extremely rigid in their life. So if you notice, these people, right, very, very rigid. And of the effective side is the effective communicator because they have the logic, they're deliberative, they can discuss, they're very prudent, very practical, weighs alternatives, stabilizing, objective, rational, and of course, extremely analytical. So then we come to the last of the, the behavior patterns, the behavior types that exist in our mind, right? Which is the sensors behavior characteristics. Ineffective side is they don't see the long range, right? Status seeking, right? Self-involved. They would not delegate. They would do it everything themselves. Acts first, then thinks, right? Lacks trust in others, dominating personalities, and appear very, very arrogant. Yeah. So Abhishek was sharing some experience in the beginning of the webinar today that he has people who behave like that. Probably some of these behaviors that we are describing will reflect that. Effective side is the pragmatic, right? The very assertive, directional, result-oriented, objective, competitive, and extremely confident. Right. Now, if you look at the four personalities, the whole idea is if you want to succeed with people of different behaviors, then you need to flex your communication. You cannot say one size fits all communication works. No, it doesn't work. So you need to know yourself. That is your behavior analytics and helps you become self-aware. One of the biggest benefit that you as an individual will have. Second benefit is how to interact with others. So know yourself, be sensitive to the way others see you. Then you know the style of others and communicate in their style, right? It is important for you to know that you cannot change your personality type, but by knowing about your personality type, you can change your communication to suit the other person. That means between husband and wife, instead of conflicting relationships, you can become a complementing relationships. No, we are called upon to do a whole lot of conflict management programs in the corporate world, right? Interdepartmental rivalries, interpersonal challenges. Why do these things happen? It happens for the simple reason personalities are clashing. That is why you need to know yourself with the help of behavior analytics, be sensitive to the way others see you and know the style of others and communicate. I can't change my personality, but I can change my communication. Did you see how behavior analytics actually helps you as an individual, right? Directly, right? Let alone the organization that we will talk about as we go forward. So now, what are the benefits of FATS types of behavior, which Carl Jung so wonderfully contributed to this world, right? The feeler, intuitor, thinker, sensor types, right? It says enhances self-awareness, which is key. It also tells you about your hidden strengths, your blind spots, what I may have blind spot, which I don't know. It'll let me know, and my inner weaknesses. It also helps you clarify your ability to understand others, your do's and don'ts, and what you should do, what you should not do in your communication, and learn and practice style flexing. That means I don't communicate like a parrot the same way to everybody, one of my team members, or every one of my family members, or every one of my customers. I differentiate. I know, no, I become a strategist. Behavior analytics helps me in my communication strategy, correct? Behavior analytics helps me in my collaboration strategy. Behavior analytics helps me in my leadership strategy to influence and motivate my different team members. You look at it, application is universal, right? You can benefit by becoming a better team member. You can benefit by in your leadership journey. You can benefit by in your sales journey, or in your ability to get along with your as a colleague with your team members, whole or in your own family, right? So huge, huge, huge benefits. So know your people's behavior and attitudes. You must know something. We are all born different. We are not the same. right? And we are conditioned completely differently, which we'll talk when we talk about Marston. Everybody has strengths and powers. Everybody has strengths and powers. I re-emphasize why this is important, because gift of psychology. If you're going into behavior analytics and attitude analytics, it's important to know gift of psychology says use your strengths to progress. You can never progress on your weaknesses. So don't unnecessarily pay attention to your weaknesses. And gift number two, tap into the strengths of others to succeed. If I'm weak in something, I will not worry why am I weak in this. I would look for somebody who is strong where I'm weak, and thereby I collaborate. So, and this strength and weakness can happen between the four types that Carl Jung just now spoke about, which I was sharing with you: the emotional types, the feeler types, the sensor types, the intuitive types, or the logical types. All these people can definitely help you understand, right? Tap into the strengths of others. So that is why one exercise that you need to do every day, you're interacting with these different people: your father, mother, your spouse, your children, different children, your brother, your sister, your boss, bosses, maybe your colleagues, different colleagues, your friend or friends, and of course your customer or customers. Each one of them have a thought process, a personality type, which is the FATS. Some of them are dominant feelers, some of them are dominant intuitors, some of them are dominant logical thinkers, right? And some of them are dominant action people, right? So the moment you understand what I shared with you is just a glimpse, but when you go into the science proper, you will understand that there is so much more to understand. You become an expert in actually mind reading people. And that's the foundation that Carl Jung gave 100 years ago, 100 years ago, almost. Yeah. All right. Now let me introduce another great psychologist, Dr. William Moulton Marston. That's his full name, but if you say Dr. William Marston is fine enough. 1893 to 1947. He is um, occupational psychologist and a writer. One of the wonderful books that he published is Emotions of Normal People, right? He studied that, right, in those years, 1893 to 1947, Emotions of Normal People, right? That was his early publication. And what was his focus of study was influence on behavior of individuals due to their upbringing and environment. While Carl Jung focused on genetics, William Marston focused on after you're born, what happens, right? And that is where he tried to bring in analytical dimension to that aspect. Yeah. So we'll discuss that a little deeper. So he came out and gifted all of us in the field of behavior analytics four quadrant behavioral model of impact of nurture on one's inner motivation. So we all have that inner drive, the self-starter in us. So what is the behavioral model? How does it drive you, right? And that's where Marston becomes very important for us to understand. So what did he say? So he said, behavioral model of inner motivation, there are two dimensions, he says. Very simple. I'm making it very, very easy to palatable so that you take the value, right? Of course, if you want to investigate, you're most welcome to go deeper into the science because there's so much available in the market. All these researchers, the names I'm sharing with you. Of course, you're also welcome to do certification programs with us where you will learn a whole lot of dynamics. So two dimensions he spoke about is one is environment and second one is self-perception, right? So what is my view of the people around me, my environment? What is my view about myself is what he spoke about. If I think that is favorable, I can also think it is unfavorable. I think my father likes me. I think my father don't like me. I think my boss likes me. I think my boss doesn't like me. It is my perception about what the environment has to offer. Then what do I think about myself? I think I'm more powerful. I think I am less powerful. All these thoughts are in my mind only. It is an inner motivation. Yeah. So then he spoke about two more. Look at the environment, he says. In the environment, if it is, we spoke, environment is favorable, unfavorable. So favorable means I feel supportive. I think my boss supports me. I think my wife supports me. I think my mother supports me. Okay, now supportive, or I think it's unfavorable, antagonistic. He or she is against me. They don't like me, right? Or this place will not allow me to grow. So now the whole lot of dimensions, that reasons why people, the moment they feel it is unfavorable environment in the workplace, you have resignations, or you have a lot of bad blood. You have people who are unhappy, right? For various reasons, they're not happy with the job that they are doing. So because they consider the work environment as unfavorable. That's why behavior analytics comes into the corporate world. So now let's look at self-perception. More powerful. So I'm a cat, but I look at myself as a lion, right? And the other hand, my self-perception is I look at myself as less powerful, right? And that's the dimension that I am actually looking at. I look at myself as less powerful. So if I'm more powerful, I'm likely to take action. I'm going to jump into action. I'm going to be an action person. I'm going to be doer. Right? I'm going to be an initiator. Whereas if I'm less powerful, I'm likely to be adjusting to, right? So now the two principles of what Marston said and gives you four different behaviors, which is very important for us to understand in behavior analytics. So these are upbringing influences. So on one side, on the x-axis, you have the unfavorable, favorable behaviors, and of course, you have on the y-axis the more powerful and the less powerful perceptions of myself about me. Right? When they combine, you get the first kind of a behavior, which is what we call it as the 4C factors, or the controlling or the dominant behavior. The person considers it is unfavorable but more powerful, and that is how his mind is conditioned right from the childhood. And today, if he's 30 years old, there's 30 years of conditioning and programming of that mind. Easy to change? No, definitely not. Right? Even though this is not genetics, it is not easy to change because the conditioning or the programming, that's the word used by psychologists, programming. Your mind is programmed, like a software is programmed, your computer is programmed, a robot is programmed, so your mind is also programmed. Yeah. Then of course you have more powerful but favorable is the second kind of personality style. I'm using the word style, not type now, right? C2, the convincing, the influencing. People who can talk their way through, they can bring you around to their thinking. Wonderful personality in terms of convincing. Then, of course, you have the less powerful and the favorable, unfavorable but less powerful is the conforming types, the compliance types, who follow rules, regulations, policies, procedures, and make sure that the quality standards are met. So they don't, they're risk averse. So they're the conforming kind of behaviors that you notice in people, right? And of course, the last one is the submissive or the consistent, the steadiness. Yeah. So who feel less powerful, but then they think the environment, perception of the environment is quite positive and favorable. So that gives you the four styles over the years. So in a nutshell, if you want to understand, controlling behaviors is a drive to overcome barriers, seek challenges, and achieve results. Whereas when you look at the C2 behaviors, is convincing, desire to win acceptance of others through popularity and ability to persuade, right? And then of course you have the third personality style, which is the conforming, desire to work within well-defined standards and controls to assure compliance. And of course you have the C4, the fourth personality style, which is consistent, desire to perform at a steady pace and maintain group harmony. Right? And they are the four personality styles. All right. Something very interesting I want you to know why behavior analytics is such an interesting subject. At the same time, there's a lot of complexities. Why? Because just now we spoke about from Carl Jung, the genetic types, feeler, intuitor, thinker, sensor. Now, from Marston, we're talking about bringing influences, controlling, convincing, conforming, and the consistent. Now, when a person, imagine that a person actually goes to fact find and it takes assessment, there are three possibilities broadly. These broad three perspectives are: number one, as high sensor on FITS, right? A based on Carl Jung's genetics, is likely to be high controlling, sensor-like behavior, but coming from upbringing influences. Parents or the situation pushed him to become a sensor-like person, but coming from environment, right? And a convincing is more driven by a feeler and a intuitor, right? You need ideas for convincing. So that is an intuitor dominant, but then to an extent feeler, because feeler is also a people-oriented personality, right? So these two combination will produce convincing. Then, of course, conforming directly comes from the thinker, logical, analytical thinking, right? Concrete thinking. So conforming personality. Then, of course, you have the consistent coming from strongly from a feeler, and of course, a combination of intuitor or a thinker, right? So now there is a possibility that these what you see on Carl Jung's genetic types and what you see on the Marston's upbringing types can align. The scores can align. What you see is partially it aligns, partially it contradicts. And what you can also see is when you do behavioral analysis, behavioral analytics, it completely contradicts. So then you know when it contradicts, you know that genetically the person has a potential, but upbringing influences did not support. That is why we say unknowingly, unintentionally, our own parents actually destroy our potential. They don't even know, because they want to bring up the child their way. Their way may not be the child's potential way. And that is where today you have 60% of the world's population are average performers and 27% are the poor performers. That will tell you a staggering 87% of the population are average and poor performers, leaving only a minute 10 plus 3, 13% as top and good performers. That will tell you where, not knowing behavioral analytics, people have actually done damage to their own family members, right? Their own organization, their own colleagues. Come on, my dear friends. That is why today why we want to bring this knowledge across, so that you become better, right? So your family becomes better, your team becomes better, your organization does well, right? Controlling. Let's briefly take a peek at controlling behaviors. Drive to overcome barriers, seek challenges, achieve results. They are anxious to get immediate results, accept challenges readily, question the status quo, quick decisions, take charge of situations, action oriented, and happy tackling difficult problems. But you look at that, their behavioral descriptors are very interesting. They are generally very independent, self-reliant, assertive, vigorous people, right? Pioneering, and tend to dominate in any situation, any meeting. You'll see them, my way or the highway, right? Outspoken, definitely, strong-willed, decisive, persistent, argumentative, and of course, definitely want direct answers, right? They're not satisfied without. Then you look at the convincing personality. Desire to win acceptance of others through popularity and ability to persuade. They're anxious to make favorable impressions. They love social situations, enjoy contacting people, enjoy making new friends, have a colorful and a vivacious personality, entertaining and articulate. They're really good in speaking, share their infectious enthusiasm wherever they go. They can influence people, right? Convincing, persuading is their hallmark of the personality, happened in their upbringing influences. So what are the behavioral descriptors that you can easily notice? They are generally disorganized, very emotional, confident people, of course. They like change, playful, fear loss of social approval, very talkative, right? Like recognition, create enthusiasm, like stimulating, desire to help, and they're generally motivated by flattery. And that could be a black spot or a blind spot. Yeah. Conforming, desire to work within well-defined standards and controls to assure compliance. These people are excellent at following procedures, meet prescribed standards, attention to details and accuracy, usually diplomatic with others, deliberate thinker, and great respect for authority, controls, and standards. Right? Wonderful people, right? Especially for quality control, finance, accounts, production planning, audits. Oh, these are the people, the right way, conforming. Yeah. So their behavioral descriptors are the well-disciplined, soft-spoken, devout, humble, right, obliging, don't prefer abrupt changes, agreeable, definitely, orderly, perfectionist, sensitive, accurate, and uses critical thinking. Great, right? And then you have the last category on Marston's model, four-quadrant model, the consistent, desire to perform at a steady pace and maintain group harmony. If you look at these people, they are good at calming others. They are very soothing personalities, right? Good at listening and getting facts. Stick with an assignment for a long time, so they're very loyal to organizations, and of course, they support status quo, excel at studying influence on the group, and specialized skills, technical competence. That's why specialized skill, technical competence comes from the intuitor, thinker kind of a personality combination. You need creativity, you need left brain, right brain, analytical thinking versus creative thinking. Both are opposites. Yeah, that's why they are very technical experts, specialists in their own domain. Yeah. So, what are the behavioral descriptors of these people? They're obedient, thorough in whatever they do, cautious, satisfied, generous, of course, loyal, accommodating, and expects credit. Yeah, and wants others to agree. So that brings us something very interesting. Now, extending Marston one step further, so there are people who take initiative at work and people who do not take initiative. They respond. So we can divide them into two groups of behaviors, people with initiator behaviors and people with responder behaviors. So let's look at those people with the behavior of initiators. How can I reshape our environment? That is the thinking in their mind. How can we use internal and external resources? So what is this? Actually, it's a combination of controlling, convincing, greater than, conforming, consistent. That is how you can understand whether a person initiates or not. And generally, they tend to lead by inspiration and charisma. Whereas if you, on the other hand, if you want to explore the behavior of responders, they think, how can we adjust to our environment? How can we maximize existing resources? Where it's the reverse happens. Conforming and consistent scores are greater than the controlling and convincing. So that is why they become responders. So they tend to lead by examples and follow whenever necessary. Yeah. So you have two more categorization of behaviors. So if you look at that, you have the task-oriented behavior and then the task-oriented behavior versus the people-oriented behavior. So if you look at task-oriented behavior, it is controlling and conforming greater than convincing and consistent. The combination shifts. More important to task completion results even at the cost of hurting people. So you've seen a lot of people, right? And every time we go for a corporate intervention, people tell me, oh, he's the so-and-so, he's a very good manager, excellent, but technically very good, but his people handling skills are very, very poor. Why? Because he does the job, but he can hurt people through his words, through his behaviors, through his actions. Yeah? And that is why it is important for us to understand people-oriented behaviors. Convincing and consistent is greater than controlling and conforming. Here, what happens? Exactly the opposite. More importance to people and relationship, less importance to task and end. So these people seek popularity. They're very popular with people. Everybody likes them, but the jobs are not done. So it's a question of how you balance. But I'll also tell you how the conditioning happens, how certain people, you can expect a lot of work to be done, result orientation, whereas you can have a challenge in terms of in terms of in terms of people orientation, right? So now that brings us, what is the benefit of knowing upbringing, right? As well as what we spoke in terms of genetics. It enhances self-awareness, understands what motivates individuals, right faces in the right place. So look at that, very, very important. You don't put a right face in a wrong place, or you don't put a wrong face in a right place. Both are bad. That's where organizations suffer. Today, there is a challenge in performance and productivity in organizations because we have a lot of people, but in the wrong places. So that means that is why you need to understand the behavior of what to expect from this person, what not to expect from this person. Thereby, it is easier to gain productivity and performance. And it gives you an accurate direction for personal development. You know exactly how to train them, develop them, coach them, and then creation of teams with a balanced mix so that you know your project or your organization or your product doesn't suffer for want of, right? And improve interpersonal relations or interactions. All right. So now, as we bring, no, we are covered so far with the personality uh, types, courtesy Carl Gustav Jung. We have covered personality styles, courtesy our dear friend Dr. William Marston. Now we are going into personality traits, courtesy Burhurst Frederick Skinner. So when Frederick Skinner comes, I want to bring a little more light. Give me a second to switch on, right? And there we go. Frederick Skinner. So what he did, he was a very important player. B.F. Skinner shot, all these scientists I'm mentioning are Googleable. You can search for them. You will find tons of material. He's a radical behaviorist. He developed a theory of operant conditioning, the idea that behavior is determined by its consequences, be they reinforcements or punishments, which make it more or less likely that the behavior will occur again. He was one of the most influential of American psychologists. Skinner believed that the environment alone conditions individual behavior and thereby influences personality and development. So Skinner did not believe in genetics or heredity, right? But he said, oh, okay, only the environment alone conditions, right? And but for us today, when we sit back after so many scientists have contributed, we realize that both of them are partly right. Right? Skinner's entire system is based on operant conditioning. The behavior is followed by a consequence, and the nature of the consequence modifies the person's behavior to repeat the behavior in the future. Yeah. So very simply put, you have what you look at as a ABC. A for antecedent, B for behavior, C for consequences. So look at that sentence. One very simple sentence, but explains a whole lot for you. Antecedents of the new behavior, I repeat, antecedents of the new behavior include the consequences of the previous behavior, right? So now, based on what happened, I got onto a cycle, I fell down. That means falling down was a consequence of the previous behavior. So now that becomes the antecedent for a new behavior. Now, next time, I want to make sure that I don't fall from the cycle as a young boy getting onto the cycle first time. So what is happening? That is how the behavior starts shaping up. And that is how we learn swimming, cooking, tailoring, software, right? Any subject, right? You go through the ABC kind of a dimension. Yeah. So he says human behavior is a collection of behaviors exhibited by human beings and influenced by persuasion. Somebody persuades you, emotions, coercion, somebody forces it. Then you have authority, somebody telling you. Then you are led by values, you're led by culture. You have, cultural influences are certainly there. There is hypnosis. People hypnotize you without you knowing it, even without, many a time without even them knowing it. Yeah. That's why we say behavior is caught. You're hypnotized by your parents. The parents may not be hypnotized at all. Probably they don't even know what they are doing, right? Attitudes, and of course rapport, right? Then of course genetics. We spoke about genetics a lot already. Yeah. Then of course you have the ethics that come in. What is ethical, what is not ethical. So now the question is always there: are we born that way or are we made that way? So if you look at that, fast growing understanding of the human genome has recently made it clear that both sides are partly right. And nature endorses with inborn qualities, inborn abilities, and traits. Nurture takes these genetic tendencies and molds them as we learn and as we mature. And that is where the traits actually get solidified. So now, if you look at that, behavior and attitude analytics is based on the essential belief that our behavior is influenced by environment we are in, and that our behavioral aspects originate from the environmental factor of our upbringing and experience to a large extent. Different sets of environmental condition brings out varied behaviors from individuals. This view stems from years of research by the determinists and environmental psychologists. You know, psychology is a very vast subject with many, many verticals. And of course, that's where the determinists and environmental psychologists have stated that very, very clearly. So now, when you look at behavior at work and off work, now you notice when we spoke about genetics, we spoke about the personality types. When we spoke about personality styles, we spoke about the upbringing influences. Now, when we speak about personality traits, we talk about at work, off work. That means the behavior is shifting between workplace and home. The way I behave with my boss and the way after half an hour or 1 hour later, I'm talking to my team members who are my juniors, where I am the boss, my behavior can change. So, which will tell you why, right? Behavior patterns over a period of time, it's patterned behavior, but shifts from one location or one person to another, right? The way you talk to your father, the way you talk to son are different. And the way you talk to your boss, the way you talk to your junior are different. Yeah. I must not say the way you talk to your wife and the way you talk to your girlfriend are different, right? In lighter vein, yeah. But you understand the dynamics of behavior. Very, very important for us to understand. A number of factors influence your behavior at work: deadlines, nature of job, relationship with co-workers, and of course your manager's leadership style. All these influence your behavior at work. Whereas off work, right, a number of factors influence your behavior off work: relationship with family members, right, your responsibilities at home, and of course social activities with friends. All of them do matter, right? So which means completely, totally different influences, right, at work and off work. So what behavior pattern, what do we measure there? So a lot of factors that we measure. If you look at the screen in front of you, look at the items mentioned in the middle: communication style, interpersonal relation, sense of urgency, and information processing. Right? In each of these, there are two extremes. In communication style, I could be very diplomatic, or I could be very outspoken. In interpersonal relation, I could be very, very introverted or very extroverted. Or in sense of urgency, I could be high, I can display a high sense of urgency behavior, or I can display a behavior with a very low sense of urgency. And in information processing, I can be very innovative, or I can be systematic. Somewhere when the scores come in between, that shows your ability to do a little bit of both. Yeah. So that's where the graphs look like. So now you'll understand, if your score, when you take an assessment, if your score is in the extremes on the diplomatic or outspoken, introvert, extrovert, high or low sense of urgency, innovative, that shows that you're like that only. That is your behavior. Whereas if you are in the middle white patch, that means you are able to flex depending on the situation between diplomatic, outspoken, introvert, extrovert, high and low. If the situation demands, you'll do it. If the situation doesn't demand, okay, you let go, right? And that's how it is, the middle part. Then, of course, what you see in a kind of a gray, lighter shade of blue is where you notice, there's a moderate tendency to be like that, moderately outspoken, moderately diplomatic, and things like that. So it can be measured. So let's look at diplomatic people, how they influence others using strategy and diplomacy, right? So they state their thoughts very carefully and diplomatically, project an air of modesty, they resolve conflicts through diplomacy and harmony, right? They be approachable and non-intimidating, and prefer to negotiate than to argue or debate. They tend to ask rather than tell, and of course, be supportive and tactful. These are the behaviors which are very clearly evident. Yeah. Whereas you look at the behaviors of outspoken people, how they influence others. Right. Number one, take charge and be straightforward, project an air of confidence, come across as forceful and intimidating at times, right? Resolve conflicts by directly confronting issues. They take it head on, openly argue or debate your views, and state your thoughts candidly and frankly, and tend to tell rather than ask. So they are instructional, right? They are advising, they are commanding. That's how the entire dimension is. Now let's look at introvert people approach and respond to others, particularly groups. How they do it? They respond to others in a quiet, reserved manner. They get energized when alone and away from activity, hold back expression of feeling in a self-contained style, prefer to interact with others one-to-one or in small groups and avoid attention when possible, use few gestures and facial expression, prefer to introspect, and any problems that to clarify your feelings. And of course, share thoughts and feelings with only a few people you know very, very well. Then that brings you to the extrovert people, how they approach. Express their feelings readily in an open manner, right? Prefer to interact with a lot of people and groups and enjoy attention from others, prefer to talk problems out to clarify their feelings and get energized by people contact and a lot of activities and use lots of gestures and facial expressions when they talk or when they communicate, extroverts. Now, people with a high sense of urgency, what they do, consider a few important options before deciding, get things done by encouraging change, like change, variety, and action. They prefer short-term projects requiring quick responses. They're in a great hurry. Make most decisions quickly, opportunity knocks only once, and of course, burn energy in a fast-paced, sporadic manner, and finally, react quickly when frustrated and angered, have a high sense of urgency, and make decisions very, very quickly. But if you look at people with a low sense of urgency, what they do, right? Consider many options and alternatives before deciding. They make most decisions cautiously. For them, timing is everything, right? Prefer long-term projects requiring calculated responses, right? Like consistency and stability, burn energy in an even-paced, very consistent manner, and of course, react slowly when frustrated and angered, and certainly get things done through perseverance and persistence. So that brings us to the last of the traits, innovative trait, yeah, information processing by innovative people. Get frustrated by too many guidelines and rules. They don't like rules and regulations. Tend to avoid attending to details and postpone organization. Proceed on projects before reading all the directions. Make lists but often don't follow them. Take pride in doing things in different ways, like to keep plans open and somewhat unpredictable, use unconventional procedures to accomplish tasks. They don't go by the standard method, they look at unconventional or innovative ways. Then, of course, you have the systematic people, what they do, right? They organize, establish procedures, set plans, and check. You look at the 7 things they do. They tend to organize details in a timely and a thorough fashion, use established procedures to accomplish tasks, like clearly set plans which are somewhat predictable, proceed on projects only after reading all the directions, take pride in doing things in proven ways, get frustrated with ambiguity and lack of specific guidelines, make lists and usually follow them. That brings us to something very interesting. You talk about what do you call it as people's communication pattern. See, communication is a behavior. The way you communicate is different from the way each one of us have their own style. Yeah. So here we rely on a great scientist called Dr. Eric Berne, May 1910 to July 1970. He's a Canadian psychiatrist. He's very popular, and I'm sure many of you would have heard about him because he's known for 2 things. One is the science of transactional analysis. So again, you talk about analysis. So every interaction is a transaction, right? And that's where how to analyze every transaction. Then, of course, he published a very famous book called Games People Play, right? And that was a big, big contributor. So now there are 3 ego states, Eric Berne says: parent, adult, and child. So who are you? The PAC. So we all have the parent in us, we all have the adult in us, we all have the child in us, irrespective of our age. So it's a parent's state of mind. So if you look at it in a very essence, if I need to understand transaction analysis, you have the x-axis and the y-axis. I am okay and I'm not okay on the y-axis, and you have the x-axis on one hand, you are not okay, other axis, you are okay. If you look at that, parent is who believes in the thought that I am okay, you are not okay. Whereas, so there are 2 kinds of parents, controlling and a nurturing parent. Whereas there is the adult, which is I am okay and you're okay. It's rational and healthy, definitely. And of course, the child is I am not okay, you're okay, you're a free child or you're an adult child. So I am not okay, you're okay, right? So, if you notice, especially when I talk about child, it may be of interest, behavior analysis. You have a lot of people very well qualified, but working as clerical staff. Why? You have a lot of people who are not even qualified, but working as senior management people, probably even managing directors, CEOs, chairmen. Bill Gates is a O-level dropout. Dhirubhai Ambani only 10th standard. So then why? So it's got education has got nothing to do. Right? Behavior has got everything. Look at the child. I am not okay. If the child has learned I am not okay, there is something lacking in me, and you are better than me, the child will throughout his life or her life will play the subservient role. So they'll only do menial labor driven jobs. They cannot do thinking jobs. That will tell you very clearly behavior. Now we understand why, scientists say that 87% of the world's population are 60% average and 27% poor performers because of this only. And of course, you have the antisocial. I am not okay, you're not okay. So the drug addicts, right, the rapists, all the stone pelters, you notice that most of them are, I am not okay, I'm not happy with myself, but I also don't care for you, that kind of a dimension. So wonderfully analyzed by Dr. Eric Berne, right, in terms of how one can actually go into. But if you notice something interesting is the best communication pattern, of course, is the adult to adult. So that's where the win-win happens. We all heard about the win-win. Today, because of thanks to Eric Berne, you also have an insight into what is the push. I am okay, you are not okay is a win-lose. That is why a lot of parenting goes wrong, and that is why we create wrong adults. Right? A candidate who comes to an interview or the person whom you're going to marry, if they are parented with a win-lose situation, you know the challenge that you have to face with that person. Now you understand how behavior analytics can actually help you understand whom you're going to hire, whether be it in personal life, as marriage, or be it in the organization or in your business, or with what partner you want to do business, win-lose or win-win. Not to mention, you also have the lose-win. Why the child kind of a state of mind of an adult can only lead him or her to clerical positions and jobs is only because he or she is operating from I am not okay, you are okay. So now we also say something else, which I'm sure you will appreciate now. We say lots of managers, very few leaders. Why? Manager is a title given from somewhere outside, whereas a leader is what you make it from the within. So that is why today a lot of managers are still operate on the child state of mind. I am not okay, you are okay. So you tell me the rule, I'll just follow, I'll do what I'm told, don't tell me anything else. And that's where the issue is, right? And that's where the whole problem. Why behavior analytics is important if you're hiring for important positions, or if you want to bring up, promote people for right position, you need to understand what is the state of mind that he or she is operating. If you don't have behavior analytics, if you're going to depend on the rudimentary method of selecting people for promotion or selecting people within for important assignments and roles, and then struggling with the outcomes, that is because we are not using. So the criticality of behavior analytics is growing worldwide. So huge number of organizations globally consult us, and that will tell you why it is important for you to go deeper into the science and then probably look at the subject. And of course, you have the antisocial element. I am not okay, you're not okay, or the lose-lose people. They're born to lose, and that is all. The suicide bombers, they're all lose-lose. They don't care for their own life. They don't mind, right? Bursting a bomb somewhere and killing some more before they go. But one of the best quotes I have come across. Every day, I'm sure you come across a whole lot of quotes on the WhatsApp and where in the social media. But this is one quote I just fell in love. And from a behavioral analytics perspective, people's behavior and attitude analytics perspective, try and understand. I just go part by part, but it's very important for you to know. Each person designs his own life. Yes, I design my own life. You design your own life. Yes. Now, because I design my own life, that gives me the freedom, correct? So that gives you the freedom. So freedom gives him the power to carry out his own designs, correct? I have the freedom, I carry out my own designs in my life. After all, it is my life. So when I carry out my own, have the power to carry out my design, I feel the power. And the power gives the freedom to interfere with the designs of others. Now you understand why people interfere in what you do, why people tell you you're wrong, why people tell you it should be done yet another way, because they are interfering because they think that they are right and you're wrong. And what a quote from Eric Berne. And now your behavior analytics will help you understand what you should do, how you deal with those people. Right, and of course, I must introduce Douglas Mcgregor. Right, he is very well known. I'm sure many of you would have heard about him. He is the scientist of the theory X and Y fame, leadership and motivation, the human side of enterprise. Right, he's contributed immensely. Right, he spoke about theory X and Y behaviors of managers, and specifically managers at work, the theory X manager, right, and the theory Y manager. Theory X manager thinks that his team members dislike work, and theory Y manager thinks attitude is that they are interested and enjoy working. Completely contradictory behaviors between theory Y managers and theory X managers. Direction must be force or bribe to work, he thinks, or theory Y says they are self-directed, don't worry, they'll do their job. Responsibility, avoid responsibility, and seek and accept responsibility. Motivation, money and fear of the job security, that is why they are working with you, right? Or desire to realize one's own potential. And of course, you have the creativity, right? Have little creativity and resist change. And then they say born creative, they accept change. So you notice they are the two poles apart, theory Y and theory X. And studies were done to find out how many of our managers are theory X. They found today 70%, sir, 70% of the managers are theory X behaviors. Now that means they have a negative outlook about their team members. Now you tell me how is going your productivity and product performance is going to happen when the manager is a theory X person. Theory Y is only 30%, right? So let's look at behaviors of X and Y managers. Authoritarian, repressive managers, tight control, no development, depressed culture. Staff underperform. So you should know the behaviors of managers. Of course you should know. Whereas theory Y managers, liberating, developmental, enabling, empowering, delegating, right? And of course, there is achievement, there is improvement. So then we are not saying the theory X is wrong. But even as what Douglas Mcgregor says, you need to know when to use your theory X behavior and when to use theory Y behavior. So for that, you need to know how to analyze yourself, your own communication, your own behaviors, how do your team members behavior. That is why behavior analytics in people management becomes very, very important, very significant. Today, going forward, you and me have no choice but to go deal deeply with it. But behaviors, attitudes, and thinking, it all starts with me. My attitude affects my behavior affects your attitude affects your behavior affects my attitude. Wonderful, isn't it? It goes in cycles. See, now you see the connect between behavior and attitude. So now how we can influence behaviors. You give a positive response, you get a positive response, then the entire cycle is positive. So how do you influence other people's thinking and behaviors and attitudes? Know your own response style, how it affects others, and develop effective response styles, and then influence people positively. And that's definitely possible. We are almost coming to the end of it. But what is important is to understand people's locus of control. What do I have control? So people say, I have control, I don't have control. So you look at behavioral outcomes and causes. Confidence. Confidence can be internally I'm confident, or my confidence comes because I'm supported by my father or by my boss. I have a godfather in my boss, etc., etc. Or confidence is I feel I'm very stable or I feel I'm very unstable. So now when both of them intersect, internally I feel I'm very strong myself and I'm stable, I have the ability, I'm good, I can do it. That is the minority of the population, the 13% of the global population we're talking about. I'm good, I can do it kind of a dimension. You have the externally driven. I don't know, as long as my boss is there, as long as this boss is there, I'm okay. He's okay, good, stable. There's a task difficulty because the mind is focused on the external. Whereas the person is unstable, but internally is strong, he only works hard, labor jobs. Whereas the person is externally dependent, he's also unstable. They are the ones who say, I'm not lucky enough in my life. So they blame everything on luck. So that will tell you why it is important for us to understand the behaviors, behavior analytics. Why is it important for us to measure, predict, and mitigate personality? Measure personality, measure motivation, inner motivation. We spoke about the threat, the awareness, and the vulnerabilities. Then you predict behaviors, patterns, and risks and outcomes, and you mitigate threats, expense, reputational damage. All these can be a huge, huge benefit in terms of behavior analytics. So now, what are the benefits? Behavior analytics gives you recruitment solutions, hire for attitude, train for skills. It helps you job profiling, competency mapping, succession planning, performance management, performance appraisal, training need analysis, team building, employee empowerment, 360-degree feedback, not to mention personal, interpersonal dimensions in your own personal and professional life. So five major benefits that you're taking away from behavior analytics. Number one, provides insight into one's innate strengths and identifies the key areas of improvement. Number two, understand predominant personality and working style of the individual. Number three, enables allocation of right individual to the right roles to enhance business performance. And four, identify the collective strengths of the individual and leverage it to gain a competitive edge. Finally, objectively measure an individual's competencies to help devise plans to bridge gaps in performance and potential. Yeah, we're at the end of it. Thank you for being here. You can seek professional help to improve. We are, psychometric assessment from TAW. We do professional certifications, behavioral interventions in organizations or institutions, or for individuals, change catalysts, performance enhancers, and authors and researchers. People's behavior and attitude analytics helps and enables individuals as well as organizations to get the best out. So whether it is with respect to career, with respect to relationships, with respect to self-awareness and personality development, communication, leadership, or personal branding, you can always feel free to connect with us. Yeah. So thank you very much. I know the topic is very, very heavy because the science is so big. Even I was wondering, when I was talking to our content team, how do we make it as simple as possible to deal with a very tough topic? Hope we have done justice to kindle the fact that you stayed through a heavy dose of behavior analytics shows that you are very keen interest and very passionate. Thank you very much for that. Yes, I'm open to questions.
See, my neighbor, for 15 years, she was in CRM. Now
Yes,
she's promoted. But the
okay,
problem is she's not able to manage.
absolutely.
What can be done for her?
Thank you for the question, though. That's what we say. Look, he or she is a specialist in the job. They have done the job very well, and that is where she got promoted. Because of her exemplary performance in terms of the job, where the domain expertise, where she is very, very good. Now, when she is promoted, what happens? The dynamic is not about doing the job, but about getting the job done. So when I have to get the job done, I need to delegate. I need to delegate, which means it is what is her challenge is not on the technical domain. Her challenge is people skills, right? She does not know how to motivate people, inspire people, how to make them do what she wants them to do. And that is where the whole dimension is. So if you want to coach her or guide her in terms of interpersonal dynamics, in terms of people orientation, in terms of, her definition is as a leader, your job is not to do the job, your job is to get the job done. So that means you're completely dependent on the communication skills. So, but the problem is, if she's got 4 people or 5 people or 8 people reporting to her in her team, everyone's behavior is completely different. So that is why behavior analytics comes in. If she can identify who's what, then she can pick and choose what strategy, communication strategy will work with one, right? My way of influencing is very different from the way of influencing John or influencing Sitaram or influencing Gauri. Why? Because they're all different individuals. The moment psychology says, moment you take individual differences, right? That's where behavior, attitude, and thinking comes. Because we all think differently. We are all conditioned. Nobody is wrong. You're right. I am right. Nobody is wrong. Psychology doesn't blame anybody. Doesn't label anybody. That's the beauty of psychometrics. There's never a rejection tool, but it only identifies strengths. The moment I start identifying what is good in and what happens, you will also find the good in me. But if I blame you, what you'll do, you have to defend yourself. If I find one fault with you, you'll find 2 faults with me, or probably 10 with me, because we all have faults. So then we both are going to go on a conflicting situation. When we are conflicting, tell me, how can I get the work done in the event you're reporting to me? Or if I'm reporting to you, how do you get the work done from me? We are conflicting. I will do everything to erode, and that is her challenge, which can be addressed. Number one, when a case comes like this, there are 2 or 3 approaches that we can do. One, the person in question consults, talks to her, understands her complete problem with a lot of interactive questions. You know how to probe. You understand her situation first. Then you suggest, behavior analytics, assessments to be taken. She takes it independently online, right? Once she registers as a candidate. So once she takes it, then you do the interpretation. If you are a certified user, you can do it, or you can depend on one of our certified users who will actually do the interpretation, so that it's also a learning for you, learning for them. They understand their behaviors, so they can bring about modification in their own behavior. Because whole dimension of behavioral change is, I have no control. I cannot change you, right? But I can change my way I respond to you. I can change my thinking. So it is easier to change myself rather than to think, expecting my father to change, my wife to change, or my boss to change. That is not going to happen, right? So that is where psychology, through behavior analytics, focuses on the individual to take charge of one's life, one's career. Thereby, they'll be happy in their life at work as well as at home. Right? You can bring a lot of happiness back home in their specific relationship. I'm telling you, because we are there in the field for almost 25 years, we have, followers across the globe. People tell me, look, my marriage changed. As a father, I've changed. As a mother, I've changed. The way we conduct have changed. People have noticed it. And that is one of the reasons why we get calls all over, from all over, and a huge, huge, job satisfaction for you more than anything else, right? I'm telling you, because you're addressing a core need of people, which others cannot solve. Behavior analytics is the only way out, and that can give you a very, very tight, 100% scientific solutions to fixing people's problems. Anybody else? Anybody else? Any thoughts? Any questions? If I can be of help.
See, you talked about locus of control. Suppose
Yes.
I'm first quadrant. That is, I'm confident, I'm stable, and very good. Will it lead to procrastination and pushing things towards the end?
Excellent question. Thank you very much. Now, because I think you actually hit a nail. So imagine, in fact, your question reminds me of one Singapore company asked us, can you tell us, can you do a training program? The title of the training program is Why Positive Thinking Does Not Work, correct? So we all, we say positive, you think positive, it will work, right? The whole program was designed to do why positive thinking does not work. Right, it is exactly on the same lines you're asking me. Person is stable, right? Person is internal control, right? Then will it lead to? Psychology says one thing very interesting, right? Anything which is over strength has a weakness. A person who's too strong. That's why even when we do competency, incidentally, we did a webinar the other day on behavior competency analytics. Right? There also we talk about, we were relating it to competency. Today I didn't touch that because many of them have attended that webinar also, right? So next time there is there, probably you're most welcome. It is a competency and dimension. Even in competency, we say Imagine that, for example, you use the word confidence. Let me take the word confidence as a 4 parameters. I have low confidence, LOW. I have a moderate confidence. I have a good confidence. I have a overconfidence. Now my question is overconfidence good? You will say no. Because of overconfidence, I'm likely to be careless, I'm likely to do mistakes. So that is why in psychology, any score that comes in the two extremes, low confidence and overconfidence, both have strengths, but both have weaknesses also. Right? Because of low confidence, what is my strength? My strength is I may not take risk at all. Correct? So low confidence has a positive side also. Likewise, a high confidence can have a negative side also. So that's why the psychology says every strength has a weakness and every weakness has a strength. Right? And from that angle, I think I've answered your question.